We have all these crazy gun laws now that should be protecting us. Like yesterday in Calgary, there was a shooting like in the open scene of downtown. Everybody's blown away. Like, how did they get the guns? How did they get the guns? Guns are illegal. It's like, well, criminals are going to get whatever they want.
After the first time I got stabbed, that's when it really kind of like sunk in.
Yeah.
Like either my awareness isn't as good as I thought it was, or things are getting more violent.
That's kind of what made me open up my eyes to Filipino martial arts. And I started doing more research about it. And it was, I train it personally so that I can defend against a knife is my number one concern. Number two would be a stick or a machete, tire and iron machete or something like that. For those of you guys who don't know, Rene's a Filipino martial artist. Today we're going to talk about what is Filipino martial arts and how it's applicable for self-defense. So let's just get right into it there, brother. Tell us about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do? Et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I'm currently living just outside of Toronto right now. Martial arts wise, just like everybody else, or most people, went into Filipino martial arts. Started off with JTD. Actually, sorry, let me rephrase that. I was boxing. I was Thai boxing. I got into Jeet Kune Do.
Yeah.
And then Jeet Kune Do was kind of like my gateway drug to the Filipino martial arts.
Nice. Yeah. And how did you?
Sorry, go ahead.
Where did you box? Sorry, in Spain or?
I was back in Europe when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Sweet. How did you like that?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I grew up in some pretty rough places, and my dad wanted me to get into some sort of self-defense, and we had a neighbor that boxed.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, teach this kid how to box, and that's what I got into. I was pretty heavy into it for quite some time.
Okay. Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. As I thought, for me, boxing's always been a really good self-defense tool.
Yeah.
Until someone kicked me, and I realized I had to kind of change my game a little bit.
In when you were still a kid, or when you were doing bouncing, or?
When I was bouncing, I switched. That was my transition between I was still doing Thai boxing and I was still doing Jeet Kune Do. But it's not like I relied just on like martial arts sort of thing, right? You kind of relied on just using this a lot more.
Yeah.
For those who have bounced, walk and talk is a lot better than smash and have your tires slashed.
Yeah, so true, right? So true.
And I went from. It was funny because I started off working in like booze cans in Toronto, and then I kind of switched from there to working like legit bars.
Oh, okay.
And it was a very, very, to me, like it was a really strange transition, right? Because you go from working in a place which is lawless but has better rules than some of the places that have rules.
Really? So more like just like street rules idea, like.
People are, again, there's some places that I worked in that were pretty rough, but I think people in general know that the cops aren't going to get called. So they tend to kind of like mind their P's and Q's a bit more, right?
Yeah.
And then when you work at some of the, the nightclubs and whatnot, where they're like, you can't touch me and you can't do this.
Oh, I see.
And then like they take a swing at you or whatever. It's things are a bit different, right?
Interesting. So,
at least that was my experience, right? Everybody's different.
For sure.
I was more into talking to people and trying to walk them out than smashing people in the face.
Yeah.
Because again, you live in a city that's a small circle of people that hang out in that kind of community, right? So word travels fast, and especially if you upset a group of people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, back in the day, it was like, I remember, I don't know, I was totally of age. Yes, I was of age, right? And we were at a bar and, two guys wanted to duke it out, right? And it was basically a gentleman's agreement, right? They go outside, they smash each other, have a couple black guys, maybe a missing tooth, broken hand for sure, right? And then they'd shake hands. Sometimes you'd see a hug. They go back in the bar and have a beer, right? And those were the days that like I remember growing up with, when it was like there was still a weird way of like there was a warrior's way of like, hey, you're talking shit, let's go, right? Let's go outside and let's kind of sort that out. And I haven't seen that for a long time, man. Real long time.
Well, you got checked, right? Like I used to kind of hang out with like a punk rock community sort of thing, and the older guys always check the young guys. You get
Mm.
out of hand, you said something stupid,
Yeah,
you got checked, you got your wings clipped a little bit,
yeah, yeah,
and then it wasn't like never come back or again. It's like okay, maybe you shouldn't have said that, and
yeah.
maybe you deserved being thrown down a set of stairs. And then like after that, I'm not saying that happened to me,
Yeah,
but
yeah, for
it may have.
sure. Totally.
And but you get checked, right? And
Yeah,
I think that's the problem now is people don't get checked. And also with there were weapons involved when I was younger, like when I was working in places, but nowhere near what I think is around today.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the willingness to use it too, right? So
Isn't that the truth, right? It feels like anybody who's anybody nowadays is compared to using their fist first and then, things get really bad and then choosing to go to weapon. It feels like they're just going to a weapon right away. I mean,
oh yeah.
that's the story that changed everything for me, right? Is there's this club in Calgary. It had like two tiers, the dance floor is down here, the bar kind of circled around, and um I was always aware, even though, I was drinking, I was still aware of my surroundings and things. And I was at the bar getting a drink, and beside me, there's this girl there, and this guy comes up, starts talking to this girl. This girl's not flirtatious, but she's definitely enjoying the conversation, right? And the boyfriend of her comes rolling up and is like, "You can't talk to my girl, brother. Like, get the F out of here," kind of thing. And he was way smaller. Like the boyfriend was way, way smaller, right? So the guy's like, whatever, shoves him, kind of walks away and, goes down to the dance floor. And this guy, the boyfriend, grabs a beer bottle when beer bottles were still allowed, smashes it off the edge of the bar, and literally launches off the second floor with the beer bottle and just boom, right into the neck, like right in the trap, like not into the neck, but right into the trap. Right. And that was the last time I actually seen a fair fight. And then it was just crazy chaos, multiple attackers, you name it. Right. And um, that changed a lot of things for me. That actually made me think like, okay, I need to start training in a weapon-based system because I have hand-to-hand skills, right?
Mhm.
My ground fighting was okay at the time, not terrible, but not bad as well. Um, and that's kind of what made me open up my eyes to Filipino martial arts. And I started doing more research about it. And it was I train it personally so that I can defend against a knife is my number one concern.
Mhm.
Number two would be a stick or a machete, tire and iron machete or something like that. Because I had done all the staff training and, a little bit of sword training and, nunchucks and things like that. And it was cool. It was cool to be able to mess around with. It was great proprioception. I was learning about my body. My hands became an extension to the weapon, et cetera, et cetera. All the good things that we get, right? Um, but how often are you seeing a staff fight, right? Or a pool cue fight? Maybe you've seen it a little bit more because you bounced for so long.
Um,
But yeah,
yeah, yes and no. Like for me, like I definitely bouncing like after the first time I got stabbed, that's when it really kind of like sunk in.
yeah,
Like I either my awareness isn't as good as I thought it was,
mm,
or things are getting more violent.
yeah,
Um, but I also just I had left South America. I was living there for 4 years, and I saw machete fights. I saw, and I don't really call them fights. I just call them murder, right?
yeah.
Because
That's what it
it's
is.
like
Yeah,
people weren't squaring off and
yeah.
saying, um, "We shall now duel." It's like there'd be a guy ordering a coffee, and then you see like a blade sticking out that went through his body, right?
Wow, really?
Or
Eh?
a couple of things that we saw, like we were at a beach, and these two guys were arguing, like these two dudes, like local dudes,
Yeah, yeah.
but they were arguing. They both had machetes in their hands, and it was just a little surreal for me. Like I just left Switzerland, right? So to me, I
Okay.
was like,
Quite the
that was
opposite.
fun.
Yeah,
And these guys are just shoving each other. I'm half Spanish, but I understood what they were talking about,
yeah.
and it was just out of the blue. The guy was talking. He changed his body position and just drove that blade through. And he
Wow.
ended up catching the guy's ear, cut his ear off.
Yeah,
The other guy took it across the ribs, and it wasn't like one of these, movies where they hold themselves and walk off. One guy drops and the other guy goes to work. And then they walk away. It was like really brutal. So I saw that at a pretty young age. And then again, when I moved to Canada, I thought, man, this place is great.
Yeah, yeah, it should be safe. Yeah.
It's you're not walking past somebody picking up a rock thinking that you have to bash them in the head or something. It's like it was really chill. And then um I started bouncing because I was going out a lot. And I was
Okay.
like, hey man, if I'm gonna go out, I want to get paid to do this.
Smart man, efficient, efficient.
And then I started seeing that escalation of violence of people who are more like they're and don't get me wrong, there's people who are always prone to violence, but
Yeah,
compared to what it is now, like and just senseless violence, like people walking up and slashing people for no reason,
yeah,
hitting them with beer bottles, stabbing people with screwdrivers.
yeah.
Like when I started seeing that, that's when I kind of also started moving away from, some more of the after hour stuff and getting into the more, poshy kind of places. But still, it was there as well. Like it's
Yeah.
just at a
Yeah.
different level.
It is, right? And I think there's like as safe as Canada is, like, I'm born and raised in Calgary, and I always thought Canada was like a super safe place, right? But, and you find out like, well, it's illegal to carry a weapon, or it's illegal to do this, illegal to that. And it's like, okay, well, you can carry it as long as you don't use it in self-defense. And there's all of these rules and regulations. I was like, okay, well, we should be safe, and we have all these crazy gun laws now that should be protecting us. But like yesterday in Calgary, there was a shooting like in the open scene of downtown, and everybody's blown away. Like, how did they get the guns? How did they get the guns? Guns are illegal. And it's like, well, criminals are going to get whatever they want, right? And the kind of people that we're talking about, maybe except for the South American people, right, are they have ill intent. They don't care why they're doing it. You could say something the wrong way. You can try and verbally de-escalate, but in their mind, they're going, right? And when they go, if you don't have the training, like, I don't know, I think, well, you're obviously fighting for your life at that point. So,
Well, yeah, and it's one thing I really like about your videos is the fact that um, well, sometimes you just don't have an option. You just got
right.
to put the work in, right? And I think even like you're saying, like de-escalation, I think that's a lot different now with whatever bravado is going on. The kids need to feel that they need to prove themselves or whatever.
Yeah.
I hate to sound like the old man, but that's kind of like how I feel nowadays. Where,
Yeah.
like for example, I was doing a job out in Ottawa, and after work, I went to grab a pint. Like this gang of like 15 kids walked in. And I call them kids; they're probably in their 20s, maybe 30s.
Old
Um,
man.
and they were ordering just beer after beer after beer after beer. And I told the bartender, I was like, dude, get a credit card,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
start a tab. And
Yeah.
he was like, oh, he looked at me like I was the idiot, right? And then all of a sudden they all got up and walked out. And I grabbed them. I was like, you go out there now and they're gonna frog stomp you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whatever $200 you lost,
Yeah.
you lost it. And I remember giving the guy like an $80 tip because I felt bad for the guy. Right?
That's
But I was like,
very nice of you. Yeah.
in his head, he was like, I'm gonna go out there and confront these guys.
Yeah.
No.
No, no, it's not worth it. But that's where we get a lot of people who do that, right? Like in your case there, with all your training and all your experience and your background, one, don't choose to enter. Two, play it smart, play it safe. Three, if you would have done it right the first time, you would have got the credit card and started a tab. All
Yeah.
of this could have been avoided, right? Because they'd be like, well, we're just going to leave then. Okay, see you later, right? And I
But I'm
think
going to lose my life because somebody bought 5 pitchers of beer and 15 shots. Hey,
exactly.
man, it sucks.
Yeah.
But you put yourself in that position too, right? Which is something that we as martial artists or, the general public need to take accountability for that too.
Yeah.
Like Mark Denny used to say, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes.
Yep. Yep.
Um, when I go to a new town, I don't go out late at night in a part of town that I don't know because
Well, because you're smart, or just because you've been through it. Like there is kind of a naivety to it where people just have no idea. They're like, what do you mean? Like, I'm from Calgary. Calgary's fairly safe. And it's like, well, where'd you grow up in Calgary? Because I grew up in the Northeast and I am a certain way because of just growing up there. And I only grew up there till grade 8, but it was enough to see gangs. It was enough to see violence. It was enough to see my first gun. It was enough to see all these things. And it was just an eye-opening experience, and then the army sent me around, all of Canada and all these small towns. And now you're like, oh, this is the Wild West. This is a different story here, right? But it was in the army, at least there wasn't a lot of weapons, which was good. Right. When I came back from the military is when I really did start seeing more weapons, and hence the Filipino martial arts. One, because I was just interested in learning it and finding stuff that was there. And then two, when I start to do my research, I do my research,
Mhm.
and that's when I got into the Dog Brothers. And you're a dog brother yourself. So can you just
Yep.
explain to the audience like what a dog brother is for somebody who knows?
So the Dog Brothers clan or the tribe, we've been around for about 30 some odd years now,
Yeah,
and they were the first uh, to literally take off all their gear, all the weak calf stuff, put on a
explain weak
thin,
calf,
yeah,
please.
like the competition gear where you have the kimonos, where you could literally hit someone with a baseball bat and they won't feel it.
Okay. So
They got
protective
rid of the thick
equipment.
hockey gloves,
Yeah.
and just like it was a fencing mask, thin gloves, and if you liked your knees, you would put on some, like volleyball style knee pads.
Yeah.
The key is nothing hard can be used. No hard plastic, no nothing. The key is to literally go in there and test what you know
Yeah.
and how you're going to survive and how you're going to adapt and everything else, right?
Yeah.
And it is full contact.
Yeah.
Fights are usually between 3 minutes plus, depending if they like the fight to keep it going. And it's no judges, no rules, no trophies.
Yeah.
You go inside, and deep down inside, you know whether or not you got your ass kicked or not. But
Yep.
that is how you. That's what you take back to your lab,
Mm,
strengthen who you are, come back out, and then strengthen the guys who you train with and who you fight with, right?
yeah.
So it is 100% pressure tested,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and I always get a lot of grief from people say, "Well, my group did that first," and I'll say bullshit. Anybody who's been around for as long as I have knows that those guys were the first guys to do it. And then people say, "Well, we did that too." It's like, show me,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, because a lot of them is just nonsense. It's just like, and I also get in trouble because a lot of the Filipino martial arts community, like who do the weak half still fighting now, which I
Yeah.
don't care if that's what you want to do, enjoy it, but call it
Exactly.
for what it is. It's a competition.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
uh,
So
you know, it's
for those people that just don't know, I'm just going to fill them in real quick before we
mm,
continue on. Is WEKAF, WECAF is basically an organization where two Filipino martial artists get into a ring or whatever. It's a sanctioned event, and they have sticks, either two sticks or one stick, and they have all this protective gear and they go at it. There's a whole bunch of different point systems I'm not going to bore you with, right? And it's basically they're hitting each other with sticks and they're clashing and getting into a fight. The Dog Brothers would do the same thing, but without any of the equipment. Usually, all the videos that I seen at first where you guys were outside because nobody wanted to host you inside because everybody was getting their shit broke.
yep.
And they would just go at it, right? And that was one thing that I really admired, right? Because yes, they're real sticks, right? I typically didn't see batons. I typically just see mostly sticks.
Hmm.
There was no knives at the time because nobody wanted to do real knife fighting because that's a death match, right?
Yep.
Um, so everybody would go at each other and they just test their stuff, right? It became an organization known as the Dog Brothers, and it was basically how you earned your keep, right? Was how many fights did you have? How did you do in those fights? This is where I seen a lot of the fights where a lot of the Filipino martial arts stuff I was learning was looking much different,
Hmm.
right? It was, and I love that you used the word pressure test. You and I have many conversations about people that say they pressure test their stuff, but do they really pressure test their stuff? And in the self-defense world, I think it's so important that for me, like once I learned the art of Filipino martial arts, it's like, cool, here's all these different people who offer these different things. Here's all these drills that they've done. So, like I did with striking, striking to me is straight strikes or circle strikes, right? From the upper body or the lower body. I just made it a concept and then I built my self-defense system off that concept. I have a very similar concept when it comes to weapons, right? Is it coming from the forehand side or is it coming from the backhand side? What is the range of the weapon? And that should determine what I do. Because what I found, and please, let's jump on this, is a lot of the drills that we were doing, a lot of the patterns that we were learning, a lot of the partner work or even sparring we were doing all of a sudden didn't work when we started going at it. Right. And I mean, like, really going at it. Right. We weren't as stupid as you. Right. Where we just, because I'd want to take a shot out the head. Right. So we'd put on hockey helmets and have on some hockey gloves, but we loved hitting each other.
Yep.
Right. So we take the stick off the body and everywhere. I was just more concerned about my head because I want to still be smart. Right. Well, kind of.
It's all on how you and how you train and how you think. You know, like
Yeah.
if you play paintball and you put 2 rounds in your hopper, it changes the way you think and the way you play. And it
Indeed.
brings that adrenaline up because you're like, if I make a mistake once, I'm dead.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with me with this stuff. You know, for a while I started fighting without gloves because I wanted to see what it felt like.
Mm.
Like not the felt not to break my hands because I'm a
Yeah.
carpenter, so you know breaking my hands is not a good thing.
Yeah.
But the fear that it brought out of me, and
Mm.
that if I don't move or do things right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna lose. I'm gonna lose some time working.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which made things a lot more real for me. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying it's smart because it isn't. You know, I've taken a lot of chances. I went from a regular fencing mask to like a century-old mask. There's a picture of Dean Franco wearing it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
basically you can do stuff like this with it. It's
Yeah. So
and
much protection. Yeah.
you know, I don't think it was very good for you know for my memory.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it was very good for my memory.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but you know, it sure changed the way I moved. You
Yeah.
know, it's very, very different. And it also showed me the limitations of Filipino martial arts, right?
Right.
Like there's a lot of I equate it to a lot of the other arts that I studied, like Krabi Krabong and stuff, which is a Thai weapons art. You know, like they would have like a general or a commander go into a village, teach a bunch of people some stuff, and say, "Hey, if you survive after these people attack us, then I'll teach you some more." Uh, but in times of peace, what is a guy like that going to do? He's
Yeah.
just going to add a bunch of garbage to it.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff happened where it's like, you know, we went from like a simple 2 strike count to like now it's 95 counts.
Yeah.
And, you know, and one you have to hold the sticks on your head like antennas. Like it just like, it makes no sense to me, right? Like, because that's not the way you fight. And
Yeah.
so part of the thing for me was to, once I started putting a lot of time into this, I started traveling and training with different people, was to like render that fat
Yeah.
and see what I can get out of it.
Yeah.
And then see the holes that I saw in there. When I started mixing my Thai boxing with my stick fighting, it became a different animal.
Indeed.
When people started grappling and taking me to the ground, and I had zero defense for it,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, something's wrong with my fighting.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's why, you know, when people start talking about how one martial art's better than another, that's nonsense to me. Like, if you don't mix things up together, well, what are you going to do? Some guys are going to take you to the ground. It's like, well, I don't study this because it doesn't really work. So I'm just going to take this
Yeah.
beating. And
Yeah. Well, it's true though, right? But I mean, you and I know a lot of people, right,
Mhm.
who are trying to make a name for themselves by cutting down, other styles of martial arts. And it's like I went through the exact same journey, as I'm sure you know, right? It's like look for the holes in your system, and the only way you're going to find your holes is if you fail.
Yeah.
Right?
And
And through failure, you're going to learn, and then you're going to say, okay, well, like I've seen a lot of the Dog Brother fights that I watched, like I would say high 60, 70% of them ended up on the ground.
yeah,
Right. And it was because you guys were fighting in the woods. You weren't fighting in a dojo. You were all over the place. And, people were just tripping and falling. I forget the exact stats. I'm pretty sure it's this, though, of 60% of fights nowadays end up on the ground. 30% are by failing and fault on the person themselves. So they tripped and fell. And then the other 30% is because somebody actually tried to take them down.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's a high percentage and a high number, right? Where I remember I grew up in the day where it was like, well, my hands and my legs are good enough and my sprawling defense is good enough that I should be able to prevent everything from going to the ground. Right. But then you start actually pressure testing your shit. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow. Okay, I did end up on the ground there, and that wasn't me doing the takedown. That was me either tripping and falling, or whether it be like we're still in the dojo, right? Whether it be over top of other students or other groups because the fight's getting pretty intense. But it's a game changer, and that's why I think you and I get along so well is because we've pressure tested our stuff, we've seen where it is, we've seen where it goes, but more than anything is we've chosen to acknowledge that we have faults, and we're
Yeah,
the first
absolutely.
to admit that we have faults, and there's a lot to be said there in the industry right now about people who don't admit that.
It's I don't know. I don't see how some people can sleep at night, and I mean that, teaching some of the garbage that they're teaching and passing it off as like this is the gospel of self-defense. This is what you're
There you
going to
go.
do,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
and I have a huge problem with that. And and I have to. There's a lot of factors that for me that I had to look at, especially my groundwork.
Yeah.
When I started like being taken to the ground more than I wanted to,
Yeah.
that's when I started seeking out people who were, very good at jujitsu. Like I know that Philip had a guy used to teach at a school who owns his own school. His name is Fabio Holanda,
Yeah.
Brazilian dude, world champion, yada yada yada. And I would do privates with him on not how to grapple, but how to get back up.
Nice. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Because in my world, getting to the ground means you're getting stomped.
Yeah. Yeah. Very
Or
true,
if they
right?
pull out a knife, I'm dead.
Yeah.
So it's like I was like, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not saying I never grappled. It's just that I always felt more comfortable standing because
Yeah.
my delivery and power is greater for me. That's my own feeling, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Um,
it's true though. Like, I mean, it's because of your experience in your life, you've understood that if you don't get back up to your feet quickly, whether it be to exit and run away or as a bouncer to be able to hold your ground and get back up to be able to control the situation and prevent it from turning bad, right? Because you got to worry about not just multiple attackers, but also members of your team as well. Right. So it's almost like your executive protection, yet you're also like a police officer where you're trying to maintain order before chaos gets too bad
yeah.
and preventing, gang on gang violence. Like that's where I think though, like the boxing mentality of take a shot to give a shot really changes when you have a knife in your hand or you have a stick in your hand, right? Of like, I don't want to exchange blow for blow anymore, right?
No,
And like I'd probably say like 15 years ago now, that's when I changed how I strike, right? Because it was always I'm taller, I'm longer, I'm faster, I'm more agile, I'm younger, I'm more flexible. So all these things were working in my favor. And then as time kept going and I started getting slower and slower, I was like, I can't do this anymore, or I shouldn't do this if my main goal is self-defense. So um, I mean
yeah,
that,
I've
yeah.
had to change a lot of the way I train. Like I had a really bad injury a few years back where I had to learn how to walk again.
Mm,
So that changed the way I moved. I
mhm.
lost a feeling in my feet, so I couldn't tell how hard I was stepping. So that changed the way I
Wow.
moved.
Yeah.
You break your hand a bunch of times, it changes the way you move,
Yep.
and then you just get old.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Father Time catches up to you, damn
Yeah,
it.
and what I found is as I got older, I got meaner with my delivery and stuff because I wouldn't take the same chances.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I think about some of the situations that I was in, and when I was younger, I wouldn't have waited as long as I waited to react.
Yeah.
Right, and or I'm walking down the street with my kids. I'm not going to get into a fight with somebody.
Yeah. That's for
I
sure.
got a 6 and an 8 year old. Do
Yeah.
they need to see their father in a fight or
No.
pull a knife or have a knife pulled on me?
Right.
Like, no, I think I'm good. We don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and it just there's so many factors. And like I said, I as well have become very jaded when it comes to the martial arts community, just because everybody wants to be an instructor
Yeah.
and everybody wants to teach some regurgitated nonsense that's being taught to them from, you know, we didn't know what context it came from.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
Like,
it's
no,
always a story, right? Well, my Filipino martial arts master or guru, he had been in a fight with a machete and, he has scars, but he's the one who's still alive and still standing. And it's like, okay, that's great, but that's not you. And that's not what you're training. And I think, like we already said, but we got to beat this with a dead horse in this industry of do whatever you want. If you want to do Filipino martial arts and you want to learn the 65, strikes or 95 blocks or whatever, do it. Just don't call it self-defense.
yep.
Just don't call it like stuff that really works because you have one story of one time where it worked.
Whoa, boom! The self-defense industry is broken, wouldn't you agree? Have you gone from martial art to martial art looking for the responses that you need to have for a self-defense situation? Well, I spent 35 years training in martial arts. I acquired 7 different black belts to find out that when I pressure tested their shit, it didn't work. So what did I do? I had to come up with my own system. Make sure to check it out at budobrothers.com. Build the confidence you need to stay safe.
I would much rather, and I do respect people more when they say, I've been working on this, I've failed it again and again and again. I've labeled this as useless or unessential. It's gone. Now I'm trying this and I'm testing this out. We're seeing if this works. And if it works, fantastic, go from there. I mean, both you and I had that same experience with Dean Franco, Guru Dean Franco,
Oh
right?
yeah.
You and I were like, there's no way knife disarms work. There's no way it can work. And then all of a sudden he gets his hands on us when we both trained together with him. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey man, like I'm a little bit more of a believer of knife disarms now. And then you were like, I don't know. And you and I are talking, right? And then
All right, now I'll tell you, I thought it was complete bullshit, right? Like I was
yeah,
like, there's no way someone's gonna grab my knife out of my hand
yeah,
and rip it out.
yeah,
And then, we were training in my basement like at 1:30 in the morning,
yeah,
and he just just took the knife out of my hand.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, I wasn't ready. That's what I kept.
It's
Then he did it
1:30,
again.
Dean. Normally I'm asleep by now. Yeah.
Then he did it again, and then I was like, okay, I am going to try to get this guy now. Like I went from happy-go-lucky to like now I'm pissed,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
did it again.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, show me.
Yeah.
And then everything's in slow motions, like learn how to do this, and then we'll
Yeah.
go from there.
Yeah.
But he pressure tests the hell out of everything, right?
Well, that's it, right? And that's why, Guru Dean Franco, shout out to him, is that, I'm a believer of it, right? I could always see it in the videos. I could always see what he was doing. I could see failure and he was posting failure. And I really, really respected that, right? And I thought it was cool. It was cool to do that. And then, when I told you about it, and then I made sure to call you like after the weekend seminar happened, I was like, how was it? He's like, okay, okay, there's something there. We're gonna play with that a little bit more. And I was like,
Yeah,
cool. Like,
absolutely.
I'm glad that you got to experience that, and I'm glad that it happened, right?
Well, it opened up a different avenue in my head too, and I started looking at some of the like tattletale stuff that I do
Yeah.
and how he hides everything.
Mm,
And then I was like, okay, well, how can I use this for my stick fighting or for
nice.
anything really?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I started playing with that, and I was showing her some of the things I was doing, and it's like, okay, there's something there.
Yeah.
There's something there. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but there is something there that we can play with.
Well, and
And
that's
and the thing too is like when you look at Dean, um, you look at his training. He's not somebody who's been doing this for 3 years or 4 years.
yeah.
He's been doing this for decades.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I'm seeing a lot of now. Is like people all of a sudden that want to be instructors. They're going out there, and like in 3 years, they're walking around like their family developed a system, and that stuff it blows my mind.
Yeah.
You have a good media presence. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
But remember, you are teaching people to defend themselves against someone who, you know, like if I'm being attacked, I got to be more scared than the other person who doesn't want to get caught.
Yes. Well, that's
Because
a
the
great way
person
of
doesn't
putting it.
want to
Yeah.
get caught and go to jail again or
Yeah.
get caught, period, is going to do whatever it takes to
Yeah.
take you out.
Yeah.
So that's the mentality of the people that I think that way when I'm training with somebody. Now, like I've been lined up with some of my best friends getting ready to fight.
Yeah.
I'm joking with them, and then we get to the front of the line, and the guy's looking at me. He's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" Because you look like you want to kill me. I'm like, "Oh, I do."
Yeah. Yeah. I have to. You know we're about to try and murder each other right
Yeah,
now. Closer
it
to
just like
seven.
is now. It's the chances of me getting hurt are so much greater,
Yeah.
and I want to survive. I always have that thing in my head. I always want to get home,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and
and it's super important to have that mindset, right? And that's why, I call it a self-defense mindset, right? And I'm trying to keep that while I'm doing martial arts training all the time, no matter what it is. Could I have exited here? Is my head on a swivel? Am I aware of multiple attackers? Am I starting in a compromised position? Like I love that when you went to seek out your BJJ instructor, right? Is your goal is to get back to your feet, right? Like in my program, that's where we start, right? We start as somebody cold clocked you. This is my white belt program. Sucker punched, fell down, whatever. You're on the ground and they're standing. How do you get back up to your feet as quickly and as safely as possible? And I use jujitsu to do that, but I also do a lot of different martial arts to help me get up. I'm not going to do fancy shit. I'm going to do stuff that works, and you're going to fail again and again and again. And once you've failed enough times and you understand it and you have it technically in you, then okay, your ground journey is complete. Now let's go learn how to do standing, striking, all these different things. And then we get to blue belt, where blue belt is now, okay, you're down, and now they jumped on top of you. Okay, now how do you get back up? Okay, you learn to fight to guard, and now you go from there. So it's always about this compromise training, because like, we talk about a lot is, if your situational awareness game is on point, you should be fine. All your mental training, everything, your verbal de-escalation skills, all of that, your ego and keeping your ego in check should keep you out of a fight, should keep you out of any of these circumstances. But if you're ambush attacked and you don't have good situational awareness, which is likely, very likely, unless you live in a higher state of paranoia all the time, you're going to be put in those situations. And that's why I put myself into those situations. I don't ever want to be there, but if I'm there, at least I know what to do. And I'm not living in this, fallacy world of, I can do all these cool martial arts techniques when, well, they just don't work, right?
yeah, and it's happening. Listen, and even with myself, and I've been
Yeah,
training for some time now.
yeah,
I was in a situation not that long ago where something happened, and before I actually started reacting, in my head, I was like, "Is this really happening?"
yeah,
Like I'm in fucking Milton
yeah, yeah, right.
outside of a Starbucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, is this actually happening right now? And then
yeah.
it wasn't until that thing that said "shut the fuck up" kicked in, because it was like literally I got rocked twice, and I just sat there and I was like, "Really?"
Hey, tell the story. I got to hear the story now. I don't know if I
Uh,
heard.
I got jumped when I was selling a vehicle.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So, but it wasn't until that again. I think when you train under pressure so much, there's something in your head that just says that's it. Like it just kicks in. So I remember there's this guy I used to box with who was much bigger than me, and he used to beat the living crap out of me. Like I remember one time I left, I had a bruise on the tip of my nose. I don't even know how I got it. It was just like I
Oh,
just crunched.
yeah.
And one day he was just beating on me where my body just said, that's enough.
Yeah.
And that's what kicked in. And then that's kind of like the kind of the feeling I have now whenever if I'm moving with somebody and they start ramping it up,
Yeah.
my body goes into that's enough mode where I either oblige
Yeah.
or stop
Yeah.
if I can. In
Yeah.
this situation, I didn't have that possibility. I had to go.
Yeah.
So there was yeah,
Because there was
like,
multiple attackers, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and I was like a caged animal. I just said fuck it.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna go, let's go, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's part I think that's missing too, is in a lot of martial arts instructors these days, when you watch these videos, on Instagram or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, 10 people attack you, and you know, you just gotta get that claw ready." You might as really,
Yeah.
might as well be bad if you can. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
It's nonsense. It blows my mind. Or people who teach gun disarms, but have never shot a gun.
Yeah. Yeah.
How's that even possible?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying you have to, like, and using a
But
knife
they're
is much
doing it for
easier
the
than a gun.
views, right? Like they're chasing for views, they're chasing for fame, they're chasing for whatever. Like that's why like I'm very grateful for what I've been able to do on the social media aspect, but I didn't ask for it. I didn't try for it. It was a video when people were like, "Hey, you're a good teacher, right? I like your stuff. It looks like it works." And we just decide to keep going with it. And the reviews are still positive. They're still nice, right?
Mm.
But it's because I actually care. I actually want to make a difference because I see all of this shit out there. Like the entire martial art world, as you know all too well, is just filled with these people that they live in fantasy world, right? And until they start, I mean, it's pressure testing, but until they, I don't know, get challenged, maybe that's it. Like stop talking and, go to the dojo and go figure it out. You don't
I've
have
never
to
seen
go with,
anybody talk about the aftermath of what their actions are going to be after as well, right? Because that's something you got to live with, whether you like it or not.
yeah,
I have a lot of friends of mine who are, in the military and police officers, and who've had to go to lethal force, and
yeah.
it messes with them.
Oh yeah, for sure. PTSD is huge. It's huge, right? But I mean, I think that's why, our stories, can help other people, but it's helped make us who we are, right?
Mhm.
Like the best Filipino martial arts story that actually changed how I look at knife disarms, because I was loving knife disarms. I'm like 4 years into Filipino martial arts. I'm like, I love knives. Let's be a knife expert. And I'm doing all these fancy disarms, and I'm like, yeah, look at this. This is so cool. And I'm just teaching. I'm not social media anything at this point. I'm just loving it and trading. And, everybody's like, cool, you took that knife out of that guy's hand. And then I'm training with some police officers. And um, one of the guy goes, hey, man, yeah, you're skilled. He's like, you got skills. It's nice. We're fighting around a little bit. We're at this, police conference. And he's my size. So it was nice to actually get like a good little, tough going on. And everybody kind of stopped and watched us because he was the fighter and I'm this new guy coming in helping teach. Right. And so they test you. Right. And so I'm doing all these knife disarms, and he's like, okay, cool. He's like, guess what happened the other day at work? I was like, I don't know. He's like, guy came out with me with a knife. He's like, I don't think I could have got the disarm. I'm like, well, if you train this way and do this, he's like, no, I couldn't get the disarm because this mofo took the knife and duct taped it to his hand and took the other one and duct taped it to his hand. And he said, let's go. You're going to die today. And if you don't, I will. And right away, I'm like, oh man, I am prioritizing everything wrong. Right. And it wasn't like my ego kicked in and was like, you got to do this, you got to do that. I was like, okay, you got to go to a wrap. You got to go to 2-on-1 technique. You got to find this, you got to do this. But that statement alone changed how I looked at the knife completely, right? And that's why until I met Dean Franco, like I still train knife disarms, but on
Mhm.
a percentage wise, it was maybe 5%, right? Since Dean, I'd probably say my training's up to like 15%, right? Because it wasn't too different than what I had already learned being a third degree in Hapkido and having some joint lock skills and manipulation that I could do it. But it was also, I was trying to do disarms that weren't relying on fine motor skills, right? So it was just interesting. One other thing that we brought up that I want to make sure we don't miss is this concept of defanging the snake. Okay, so I what made me think about it. So for people that don't know, defanging the snake can be thought of two different methods, at least that I've learned in Filipino martial arts. Is one, you hit the hand hard enough, the hand lets go of the weapon. Or two, you hit the head hard enough that the head no longer controls the hand, and then you're out. So there's two concepts of defanging the snake. The one that I hear a lot is, well, I'm going to hit your hand with the stick and you're going to let go of the stick. In your experience, did that happen?
Um, I remember I got hit really, really hard in my hand, my right hand, and my hand broke. I could feel the stick slipping out of my hand, and I
Mhm.
just went like this.
Switch
Now,
to the other one.
I
Yeah.
have been hit in certain parts of my arm
Yeah.
where, like, huge bruising and the swelling made it impossible for me to grab a stick again.
Yeah.
And that, I would still try to fight it off
Yeah.
because that's part of the thing too. It's just because you get hurt doesn't mean you stop. You want to see how far you can push it.
Yeah.
Have I been hit with the brachial plexus hits and all the other stuff like nerve hits and stuff like that? Have I been hit with them? Yes. Have they hurt? Yes. Was I in an adrenal state? No.
Yeah.
So that makes a huge difference.
For sure. Yeah.
Um, you know, um, the 2 times that I've been stabbed, I didn't feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Because
hear
I
that all the
was
time.
way hyped out. I was like, I was on stratosphere, what do you call it? Adrenaline.
Yeah.
Holy shit, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Um, if someone were to walk up to me and go, "Hey, Rene, how you doing?" and like stare at me, I think
I think you know then. Yeah.
that'd be a lot different. So, can they work? I I can't say I've seen enough to make a significant percentage.
Yeah.
Have I used like elbows and spikes when people are punching? Yes.
Yeah.
Did they stop me? Did they stop punching? No. Was their hand broken? Possibly.
Yeah.
But again, I think adrenaline is one of those magic. It's one of those magic elixirs that can, you know, can make a mother lift a truck off a baby.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
is that person going to be severely injured after? Possibly,
Yeah.
but I'm not worried about what happens to them after. I'm worried about what's happening during.
Well, that's
Right?
it. And it's like how you choose to prioritize your training then, right? Because there's certain schools in FMA that heavily focus on just attacking the hand, attacking the hand. And with a stick, I disagree because of exactly what you're saying. One, because of PCP, it's a hell of a drug. Not that I've done it, okay, but I've seen guys on it, I've seen guys fight on it, and they are supermen, superwomen. Like it is insane how far they're able to continue to push, right? Um, I was one of the guys I was training with, he fought a guy who was on PCP. He was a police officer, right? And he said he took out his baton and he tried to hit all the soft tissue parts to do everything legally correct so he wouldn't get in trouble. None of that stopped the guy at all. So he went to the knees, went to the elbows, started striking bones. Nothing stopped at all. He heard it crack so bad at one point that he looked at his baton and he thought he broke the baton, but he must have shattered the guy's knee. Didn't stop him at all. The guy
Yeah.
just kept coming forward and forward and forward. And like, it's a crazy story, right? And the only thing that got him there to a point where he could control this person was actually jujitsu and was his ground fighting training that gave him a level up, which was, it was a cool part of the story that I liked, right? But again, it's, if your system is saying that if you can target the hand and you hit the hand will always let go, I'll disagree with that. If it's a machete, it's a little bit of a
Yeah.
closer,
If you
or
remove the hand is no longer a threat, right?
exactly. Like there's that
But you
one
know
video
what?
that went super viral. Yeah.
If we're at that level of violence and self-defense,
Yeah.
why target a hand when you're going when you got to stop the person and just like when I see people like, oh, a guy comes with a knife and you parry and you cut the inside of this bicep and you come around, you poke him in the eye, and then you take a little bit off the side of his belly and then you stab him. If you're at that range,
Yeah.
why are you doing all this fancy shit?
Yeah.
That's where the sewing machine comes in.
Yeah.
Right? Chances are you might stab yourself a few times doing it.
Yeah.
But like, cut it out. Like, cut that shit out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It just, like your friend who had that fight with that guy in PCP. I fought a guy who was so walked out, and I was walking him out of a bar,
Okay.
and his buddy tapped him on the chest or in the back.
Yeah.
And the other guy thought it was me. And I was literally, I turned around and I saw this fist, one across my jaw, one across my throat.
Yeah.
And he got into this like crazy, like it wasn't a brawl. I was just like, I was trying to control this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I realized I couldn't, like his head accidentally went into a wall. He hit the ground.
Yeah.
He accidentally got hit with a bunch of elbows because I was trying to get up, and then he still fought. I had him in a guillotine, and I picked this guy off the ground. Like I could feel his trachea on my knuckles,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he was still fighting me.
Wow. Wow.
And it's like when you're dealing with someone like that, like tell me that these little taps are going to work.
Yeah. Well, and that's why you hear all the Filipino martial. I can hear them right now, especially when I posted video on FMA discussion, right? And well, you don't know this, you don't. Sure, sure, guys. Like it's cool. Like I respect it. I'm sure you have a story. I'm just saying, let's look at the data, right? The data of you hitting a hand and making their hand let go of the stick is possible. The probability of it working the majority of the time is not. A machete is going to increase that percentage, but is it going to be a guarantee? And like Rene said, like somebody's coming at you and you slash them and you use your gunting skills and you get a cut, you got one on them. But to say that you can go in and control and start doing these other things, now you've lost the martial and you've tapped into the art side, right? So cool, go train it, play with it. There's benefits from training with it for sure. We're not cutting you down on that, but
It's the shoot him in the legs, thing I always hear. Well, why did the cops just shoot the guy in the legs?
yeah.
What?
Yeah.
For? Like, oh, and the videos are like, oh, they shot him in the chest like 15 times. It's like, yeah, because they got to stop him.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
They're
a
not going to rely on that. They're not going to rely on that one bullet.
yeah,
I wouldn't.
not at all. It takes at least four 9 mil rounds, at least four 9 mil rounds to stop an attacker. It's not like what you see in
While
the
you're
movies where
crapping your
you
pants running backwards
exactly, right? And
or
it's
sideways or whatever.
whatever it is, right? And unless it's like a pure lethal hit to the occipital that's going to shut down the brain immediately, right? But that's a freak shot, right? Like you should never be aiming for the head. And I mean, the military taught us that day one: shoot center of mass, right? Not only are we hoping to injure because we're peacekeepers, right, and bring out other people, but it's because the probability of you hitting a head is very, very difficult, right? And that's why contact shooting is so important. But anyways, we're digressing. But I think that's what we kind of get into, right? Is that there's this world that you and I we really don't like because they're saying that it will work for combat, right? And it's like if it worked for combat, back to the Dog Brothers, is then everybody in Dog Brothers would be following one system and only one system. But that's why I love Dog Brothers, because you're seeing all these different styles of Filipino martial arts, and they're all coming together and they're all testing. But to me, it has nothing to do with what style of Filipino martial art they're training.
Which
It
is
comes down to how they're training.
it's kind of funny because a lot of guys in Europe nowadays are not calling what they do Filipino martial arts anymore
Nice. Wow. What
because
is it
they've
called?
there was concepts and stuff that started with the Filipino martial arts, but they
Yeah.
also they refined a lot of stuff. And they got rid of the bullshit, which makes people upset. It's like, no, this is my cultural art. Don't get me started on that.
Yeah.
Being
I
Spanish,
know.
it's
I
wrong. But there's a lot of stuff there that's just like, I'm sorry, like it's not. Like even when I teach Krabi Krabong, I'll teach the cultural side with the dances and everything else. And
Yeah.
it's like, none of that stuff's going to work, but this
Yeah.
is the stuff that I use. And like in the Krabi Krabong system, there's a whole knife system, which I learned because I had to, because of the cultural side. But there's
Okay.
a chance in hell that I would teach that to anybody for self-defense. It's
Yeah.
just so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or going back to what you're saying with I have a friend of mine who's in the military, and he's like in a high-ranking kind of squadron sort of thing. And I was in his house. We're doing some knife stuff and just showing him around. I'm like, "What do you think?" He goes, "Well, it's pretty." Because, but Rene, if I have to rely on my knife to save
Yeah.
my life at this point, it means I'm already dead.
Yeah. It's true. It's true, especially military, right?
It's like, yeah, when you're storming someone's house and they come at you and your backup is your knife, it's not good for you.
Well, you've lost everything. You've lost your assault rifle, you've lost the use of your pistol, and now you're having to use your knife. Why? Right? Like you've done everything wrong. Your priority of weapons is wrong. But I think that's why, like, as a civilian, right,
Mm.
I feel more comfortable carrying my utility tool because I'm trained with it, right? But with that even being said, like, I don't ever want to have to pull it out, ever, right? It is an equalizer if I'm losing, but it's not like I'm going straight to that. It's not like anybody will ever know I have it in my hand. If I'm approached by 5 or 6 individuals and I can't run away with my family or whatever situation, my verbal de-escalation skills aren't working, maybe I have to access it. But the thing is the laws in Canada say you can't. You
No.
can have this on you. You can have it as long as it's not hidden, as long as it's under 4 inches. You can do all of these things with it, which is fantastic. But the only thing is the second you use it for self-defense, you're going to jail,
Yeah.
right? Or you're getting fined or something like that. But I'm willing to do that if it means protecting my family,
And I
right?
think the other
Yeah,
thing too is the big problem with going straight to your weapon is now you've escalated things beyond repair.
exactly.
And the one thing, like I always tell what I used to tell my students is like, when are you safe after an altercation? And then everybody had their like 5 cents about where it was, and I go, well, you're safe when you're inside your house,
Yeah,
and the second you step out of your house, you're no longer safe.
yeah,
Because there's people out there that I remember that if you pull a knife on them or a weapon or threaten them with, death,
yeah,
they will never forget that. I know I would never forget that.
yeah, yeah.
So now you're dealing with that situation, right? Where it's like someone is going to come looking for you,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
or or worse, your family.
and that's it, right? And you can only protect your family if you're with them. What if you're not with them and now your ego has got you in the way, right? I was watching this video the other day and it was like road rage incident happens, blah blah blah, and then they feel like they're safe, so they drive all the way home. Then the camera turns back on and the same guy followed him. Guy gets out of the truck right away, grabs his baseball bat from the back, right? So now they know where you live, right? He issues a verbal threat, doesn't choose to engage. But if it was me, every day I walked out of that house now, I'd be looking at my camera to see if they're out there. And then I'd exit the house and look up and down the street. And then if I'm with my family, like all because of a road rage incident, like that's a really, really good point, Rene, is it's not just done there,
No,
right?
no,
Like you might, yeah,
my wife was driving with our kids. She was going downtown, and she accidentally cut somebody off on a motorcycle.
yeah,
Guy lost his shit, starts pounding on the top of it. And it wasn't like one of those things where she almost killed him. She
yeah,
cut him off. Anyways, long story short, she cracked open the window and said, I'm sorry. I got my kids in the car. You're scaring us. Please stop.
yeah,
The guy kept, like freaking out and yelling and, because whatever point, I guess at that point he felt that he wanted to, intimidate my wife and my kids and everything else. So guy got out of the car, grabbed the guy, shoved him out of the way. My wife ended up being able to go away.
yeah,
But she was ready for it in the sense of where she wasn't showing the guy what could actually happen or what was in the car.
yeah,
But it was one of those calm down, calm down, calm down. And if it goes the other way, she's an accomplished martial artist.
yeah.
And, when we train, I don't take it easy on her because the
Well, you're
reality is,
preparing her. Yeah.
yeah. And just like she even said, like, I was ready to go to whatever level needed to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
and
I don't have a problem with that. I think that's at that point where I say, like the laws are not there to protect my family, so we got to take that upon ourselves and then deal with the repercussions after.
yeah. Well, and that's why we all have to have our own rules of engagement, right? Because
Mhm.
I want to be able to go home to my family, and if that means that I have to do things that I don't want to, because nobody
Mhm.
wants to, right? Then you're willing to go to that level, but it's also important that you have to do it legally as well. Like nothing of what we're saying, ladies and gentlemen, is advice,
No,
right? It's our personal situations, it's our personal rules of engagement of where we're okay with going. But it doesn't mean that you should. Verbal de-escalation should be number one, right? Your wife did it right. The only thing I wouldn't have done is roll down the window, right?
yeah,
I'm sorry, because in the cage of a car, you're safe. You know,
Yeah.
she could drive off to safety when the light turns green. Like, but the second that window breaks, whoa, right? Now we're in a different story because if that guy could have, especially with biker gloves, like my old carbon fiber gloves, like, oh man, you could smash through anything on those. You felt invincible, right? And that's where everything changes, right? There's
Agreed.
a whole nother thing, right?
Yeah, there's times where I'm by no means perfect. So there's been times where I accidentally cut somebody off or something happens and I apologize.
Yeah.
And when they snap back at me and they keep going is when my Spanish and Italian blood mix and I'm like, hey man, I said I'm fucking sorry, right? Like, but that's also me. Things I need to learn how to control because sometimes you just life is tough now, right? Like everybody's going through a hard time. Like things are 10 times more expensive than they ever been. It's like work is crazy,
Yeah.
the environment's crazy, and sometimes people just snap. And
Yeah.
that's part of sometimes where I have to kind of remember the humanity in this as well, where it's like try to think about what that person's thinking, or at least separate myself enough from it.
Well,
But again,
and
once
that's
people
it.
cross that line, like we all have our method, right?
Yeah.
I give people the benefit of the doubt until I have certain markers that that person meets.
What, if you don't mind sharing what your markers are?
Um, the aggression part. There's a difference between people who are, posturing, bravado, compared to
Yeah.
people who are. You can see like their demeanor, the body posture,
Yeah.
closing that range.
Yeah.
I don't let anybody close that range. To me, that's the main thing. Like as soon as if you're in my hitting range after I've asked you to back off,
Yeah.
chances are something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely, and also the way people communicate. Because I found a lot of people who tend to get quiet. That's when things,
Yeah.
especially by themselves. With other people, I find like, yeah, fuck this guy or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I don't want to say that I have some sort of sixth sense, but I kind of feel it when people are just trying to scare other people or trying to make a big deal out of it
Yeah.
than people who just want to like, put the boots to you. Like I
Well,
always say,
yeah.
people who really want to harm you are not going to show you what they're up to. People who want to stab you are never going to show you a knife. You
Yeah.
know, and yeah, you know, criminals want to get home. They want to get away from the situation, not get caught.
Yeah. Not get caught. Exactly. Or have witnesses.
Yeah. So they're going to make it so that, they can get in and out as fast as possible. At least that's been my observation. But yeah, those are the kind of things I look for.
Nice.
And
Nice.
also just even the way people walk up. You watch the people who do the pigeon toe boxing where they're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not saying don't worry about it because, if they hit you, it'll probably hurt.
Yeah.
But there's a different level there, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think that's, like you said, you have a sixth sense. Some people will never experience what you've had to as a job, right? So you've got to interact with a lot of people in a high risk situation where they're drunk or inebriated or whatever, and you've got to learn those things over time. So is it a sixth sense or is it a learned thing? I think it's a little bit of both, right?
I think
Because
so. Again, like besides the bouncing, I lived in a whole bunch of different countries where my
yeah,
ancestors were the enemies, right? I lived in South America. It was because I'm Spanish.
yeah,
I lived in Spain. So I'm a half breed. Like all this stuff kicks in where there's always conflict of some kind.
mm,
So it makes you very self-conscious about your environment, and
yeah.
definitely doesn't let you don't let people in right off the bat,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it's true. It's a good thing to happen, right? Or to
Yeah.
have. Like I say, every good martial artist who cares about self-defense has trust issues, right?
Yep.
And it's not because our senseis and sifus beat us, they did,
Mhm.
right? It's just because we see it. We see the world in a different way. And that's kind of the idea of these podcasts that I wanted to do is can we just open up the world and can we have great people like yourself who have been through it, right? And can just kind of share their side of things, right? Because as much as you and I both love Filipino martial arts and how much it's helped us in our lives and how much we both teach it and do things for it, for self-defense, for FMA, I really focus on more the defense of what my laws of my country will allow me to do.
Hmm.
And for me, that means I'm getting ambush attacked. I don't have access to my weapon right away. I have to deal with the weapon first, whatever it may be, a stick, a baseball bat, a machete, or a knife, or a screwdriver, or whatever, right? And be able to deal with these things. And then maybe I can access my weapon
I,
after.
th- I think that's an excellent point. And also, like from the things that I've seen you post and the things that I've seen you do, like there's that one where you showed that baseball bat disarm,
Yeah.
and people are like, "Oh, blah blah blah, it'll never work." And I sent you a video of me doing that to somebody, but in real time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh, it works. Yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
But I think that's what it comes down to too, is if you go to a school and they make you feel too comfortable,
Yeah.
or they make you feel like, man, I'm awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, look how much of a badass I am. The
Yeah.
second I hear anybody in my classroom say that they're a badass or anything like that, there's a problem.
Yeah. For sure.
It's just like, no, man, none of us are badasses. We're here to sharpen each other up. If you
Yeah.
start thinking that you're awesome and all this other stuff, and you go home, it's like, Jimmy Gillikers, that was a great class. What is
Yeah.
a learning class today? Why? I punched a bag 5 times. Let me see your hands. They're not even pink.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, there's something really wrong with that.
Yeah.
Makoto Kabayama was one of my first Jeet Kune Do instructors. He's like a street legend in Toronto sort of thing for badassery, but the most mellow guy you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
When I used to go to his class, I would sit outside on my motorcycle, terrified to go into class.
Yeah. That's a good instructor.
And
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to go inside because I don't get the shit kicked out of me. And
Yeah.
that was my own ego I had to go over, right? And I went there, and I used to go home and I had like bruises and bruises on top of bruises, like putting ice packs on my head, like before I go to sleep.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it was terrifying. But that to me was fighting. That was training.
And that's where our mindsets of how we look at martial arts, right? We're more about the martial than we are the art. And like, I don't want to knock down anybody. You
No.
guys know that I'm super neutral, right? As long as you don't say it's something it's not. That's when I have an issue with you, right? So
Yeah.
if you want to train Filipino martial arts and be all happy when you get home, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that, guys. I'm not knocking you. But if your instructor, you think that it's going to work and you haven't pressure tested it and you haven't failed, then you're not really learning the martial of the art. You're learning the art, and the art is a beautiful thing. There's so many cool things that I've learned from the art, the amount of things it's built for my body and built for my mind and built for spiritually, like, and community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the great things we talk about all the time. But this is where Rene and I have a huge issue, is when you say it's going to do something and we both know it hasn't because we pressure tested it.
Yep.
I don't show stuff on videos that hasn't worked for me and for my students and for people that are serious about training. But if you don't train something, like the comment section, I love the comment section, by the way. Please, please talk shit all you want, because it's like, okay, well, come to my dojo and figure it out. You'll see right away, or go to your local dojo and see if it works, or even ask your Filipino martial art master in a respectful way. Hey, after class, can me and my friend pressure test the stuff to see if it works? And then you'll know, and then you'll really get to see what it's like. And it was an eye-opening experience for me. So I tailored all of it, like Bruce Lee says, strip away the unessential and train the essential. It's because we're having a mindset of self-defense is number one, right? If you don't want to have that mindset, that's fine. Just understand that you're not necessarily training the essential stuff. You might be training some unessential stuff too. And that's okay. If you're on that path and that's your journey, albeit to you, at least you're not sitting on the couch binge watching Netflix for hours on end.
Yeah. Or just remind yourself while you're actually there. Like
Yeah.
for me, and I tell the people that train with me, like, we're not going to be friends for the next 90 minutes. Like
Nice.
I used to in my going into my basement, I used to have a sign that said, come with an open mind or leave with a split head. And I meant it. Like, you're there, we're all there to train. And there's been plenty of times I told people that I'm just not the right instructor for you. Like you
Mm.
need to go find someone else, someone who maybe is more on the cultural side of something, or that
Yeah.
can teach you the finesse of something. Because sometimes I want to have a certain attitude or mentality in my classroom.
Yeah.
And if I got a chatty Cathy or a chatty Larry, I don't know what you call a guy,
Who knows
or
these days?
someone who's just like, oh yeah, well, I learned it this way. Um, it takes away from, what I do. And I'm not trying to be again, I'm not a bully. I don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
you
know,
don't prioritize it, right? And
no.
that's what's fine. And I love that you said that, right? Is that you'll send them somewhere else and be like, hey, I love that you love Filipino martial arts. I love that you want to learn about the stick and knife, but this isn't the place for you. Please go this place. They're going to suit you so well. And I think that's what's important about the community is we're still trying to build each other up. We're still trying to help Filipino martial arts become something because there's some great, great stuff from it. It's
Yeah,
just let's just not call it something it isn't. So,
yeah. That's
bro, that was awesome. Really, really appreciate you coming on the channel and
no,
just
thanks for having me.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And I can't wait till we can get together one day. We're on opposite sides of Canada, so one day we'll have a meeting somewhere in the middle. We'll have you out or something like that. And
Preferably in the
we'll
summer.
get yeah, oh, definitely a summer, not winter. Winter gatherings suck. Yeah, it's too cold in Canada. Eh?
Oh,
Awesome, brother.
all right.
Do you have any social media things or anywhere where you want to kind of promote your
Um,
style of training? Like I know that
we got Beat the Crap Out of Cancer happening all over North America and Europe.
okay,
That's happening soon. Everybody has got different dates. Um, so that's one thing that's happening next week is the Canadian Gathering.
yep,
It's going to be held in Ottawa, and I
okay.
think the other ones in February is going to be in Vancouver.
And this is all for the Dog Brother stuff?
For Dog Brothers, there's some training camps coming up as well. The surf camp, which I've been teaching at.
Nice.
This year, I'm going to be going as a participant because Arlen Sanford's going to be there,
Okay, cool.
and uh, also Benjamin Lonely Dog. He's going to be out there teaching as well.
Nice.
Great events if you want to get to know the community. If you want to see me surf real badly, and
Awesome. And
but the
you
food's
have
good.
you're teaching still? So,
I'm still teaching. Yeah, I teach privately. I have a couple groups.
okay,
I
do
know.
you want people to know where you are or it's up to you?
Just you can just get in touch with me through Facebook. I have an Instagram account apparently. I just never use it. And
Okay, so Facebook would be the way. Just
yeah,
spell your name for everybody so they know.
it's ReneCocolo. You can also check for a Growling Dog 71. That is my Instagram. I'll probably learn how to use that or something.
Yeah.
Um, Messenger. I usually get a hold of people within a day or so when they message me.
Awesome. Awesome. And just so they know you're in the Ontario area.
Yeah, I'm in Milton. I do have a group in Toronto. I do have a group in Milton as well, and
Okay.
then I have like some satellite people that I go and teach seminars for here and there.
Awesome. Awesome. Excellent. Thank you, sir.
All right.
For all my followers, that Shopify store is coming close. We ordered all of our stuff. So once it shows up, I'm just going to make sure everything is good. And then we'll be promoting that so you guys can help promote me and buy some cool swag and stuff. Um, if you want to learn my self-defense program, go to BuddhaBrothers.com. We have a digital product on there that you'll be able to purchase. Use KG Defense with an S for a discount code. If you're interested in Filipino martial arts, obviously you can come check me out at calgarygongfu.com in Calgary, Alberta. And there is also on the website, calgarygongfu.com, there is a knife defense, not a knife fighting, a knife defense seminar that Guru Dean Franco and I put together. I think it's one of the best knife defense programs out there. So does Guru Dean Franco. If that says anything, that's fantastic. So, yeah, always a pleasure. We will chat soon and stay safe out there, brother.
All right.
Right on. Take care, everybody.